President Trump made a rather shocking statement, saying that the Taiwan issue is something for Xi Jinping to decide, not himself. Today, let's take a closer look at this topic. Let's get right into it. On January 8th, President Trump was interviewed by the New York Times about a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan. President Trump said Chairman Xi Jinping views Taiwan as part of China and that its future is his decision. He added that he doesn't think Xi will act on this and hopes he won't. President Trump was confident Xi Jinping wouldn't invade Taiwan during his term, but he also warned it could become a serious issue. A New York Times report noted that President Trump didn't specify an invasion of Taiwan as a red line. More accurately, he simply didn't address the definition at all. Some media outlets are pointing out President Trump's remarks. The most notable point in President Trump's recent statement is that he brought up the issue of the strategic ambiguity that the United States has maintained for a long time. President Trump did not clearly say if the United States military would intervene if Taiwan was attacked. This seemed more like intentional silence than evasion. President Trump repeatedly said that it is a matter for Xi Jinping to decide, maintaining the attitude that the United States would decide what to do only after the situation unfolds. At this point, the difference with former President Joe Biden becomes clear. Former President Joe Biden has publicly stated several times that the United States would defend Taiwan if it were attacked. While the White House later clarified no policy change and tried to contain the situation, the message still seemed threatening to China. Does this mean that rather than sticking to the existing principle of strategic ambiguity, they have sent a signal closer to strategic clarity? For China, this period required military planning with the near certainty of United States intervention. On the other hand, President Trump took the opposite approach. President Trump neither gave a definite assurance that the United States would protect Taiwan, nor did he say that the United States would turn its back on Taiwan. Instead, he left everything up to Xi Jinping. Saying that what he does is up to him may seem on the surface to emphasize China's responsibility, but at the same time, it has the effect of loosening the commitments that the United States had previously bound itself to. From China's perspective, it can't completely rule out the possibility of United States intervention, but at the same time, it can't be certain about it either. This very uncertainty acts as both pressure and inducement. Trump's style strategic ambiguity differs from earlier approaches. Previously, ambiguity maintained fear of possible United States intervention. Trump's version treats intervention as negotiable. President Trump doesn't talk about Taiwan as a matter of values. He rarely uses expressions like defending democracy or international order. Instead, words like power, cost, and benefit take their place. Therefore, for President Trump, revealing in advance whether the United States military would intervene is not an option. That's because it would mean giving up his own negotiating power. President Trump announced a more than 50% increase in next year's defense budget, significantly boosting military spending. After beginning his second term, he launched the Golden Dome Missile Defense, the Golden Fleet Naval Project, and increased the defense budget. He announced the defense budget would rise to $1.5 trillion, or about $2,180 trillion won by 2027. The United States gross domestic product is spending a huge amount on defense, and a 50% increase in the defense budget in 1 year is significant. It's uncertain whether President Trump's plan will pass the United States Congress, but we can clearly see President Trump's intention. By greatly increasing defense spending, he aims to strengthen the United States military's competitiveness and gain an advantage over China. This is a clear example of his determination. Also, this increase in defense spending could cause problems for South Korea as well. If the United States actually expands its defense budget, it's highly likely that demands for increased defense spending on allies like South Korea will become even stronger. They are likely to say, "We're doing it, so why aren't you?" Especially projects like the Golden Dome and the Golden Fleet that President Trump mentioned are extremely costly. For example, the Golden Dome project. This next-generation space-based missile defense system is designed to protect the entire United States by using satellite sensors to detect missiles and intercepting them with lasers or interceptors, costing about 230 trillion won. On top of that, the Golden Fleet is also called a money-eating project. The construction cost for each next-generation battleship, which President Trump called the Trump class, is about 14 trillion won. That's about the same price as building a state-of-the-art aircraft carrier. They're buying many low-cost combat drones and ordering various warships and support vessels to boost naval power, causing the defense budget to rise quickly. President Trump's actions are clearly escalating competition with China. The United States Department of Defense submitted a report to Congress about China's military power, stating that China is expected to have the capability to fight and win a war over Taiwan by 2027. This report says China is prioritizing coercion and victory over peace on Taiwan, and has boosted its nuclear and long-range strike capabilities. If a message is sent about significantly increasing the defense budget, China will be pressured to take considerable countermeasures. In the end, China will have no choice but to increase its military power as well, and this will inevitably deal a major blow to the Chinese economy. In that situation, President Trump uses strategic ambiguity to make the Taiwan issue Xi Jinping's problem, turning uncertainty into major pressure for China. But President Trump's remarks not only pressure China, they also put significant burden and tension on Taiwan. With repeated signs that the United States won't guarantee automatic intervention in emergencies, a sense of crisis is quickly growing in Taiwan over the possibility of a sudden United States policy shift. Until now, Taiwan has considered the possibility of United States military intervention as a core premise of its strategy, but as Trump's strategic ambiguity gains attention, that premise has begun to waver. In the end, Taiwan is being pushed into a situation where, rather than relying on someone else's decision, it has no choice but to maximize its own ability to endure. Amid this trend, President Lai Ching-te of Taiwan has become noticeably more direct in his remarks. He has urged China to stop trying to change the status quo on Taiwan, stating Taiwan can no longer postpone strengthening its defenses. Rather than using external rhetoric, this is a message aimed at both internal unity and military preparedness. The Taiwanese leadership now appears to be measuring time based not on the will of the United States, but on the potential actions of China. The most notable change is the defense budget, with President Lai Ching-te aiming to raise it to 5% of gross domestic product by 2030. This figure is quite high for a country to maintain during peacetime, and it is interpreted as meaning that Taiwan is effectively moving into a quasi-wartime system. Taiwan is already applying NATO standards and rapidly increasing the proportion of its defense budget, and the pace is much steeper than expected. This year alone, the defense budget is expected to exceed 3% of gross domestic product, specifically reaching 3.32%. This figure has a significance beyond just numbers. Taiwan's defense budget tops 3% of gross domestic product for the first time since 2009. Until now, Taiwan has maintained a relatively restrained increase to avoid provoking China, but now, survival has become a more pressing issue than such calculations. In terms of total amount, the defense budget increased by about 23% compared to last year. Such a sharp rise in a short period would not be possible without a political decision. It can be seen as a result of the Trump administration's continuous demands for increased defense spending from its allies, combined with the environment where China has made military drills and pressure around Taiwan a routine occurrence. There are also clear changes in terms of the military system. Taiwan will rapidly set up a missile defense system called Key Dome. This defense network counters China's ballistic and cruise missiles and is vital for combat readiness, not just symbolic. Since China's most likely move against Taiwan is a missile saturation attack, it makes sense for Taiwan to heavily invest in air defense and interception. In addition, Taiwan is emphasizing the establishment of a defense system that actively combines advanced technology and AI technology. It's about maximizing efficiency with an intelligent defense system, not just adding troops and weapons. Drones, unmanned power, real-time information analysis, and automated command and control systems are being mentioned as key elements. This aligns with an asymmetric strategy aimed at deterrence, rather than directly confronting China's overwhelming numbers. Taiwan now faces a choice between Chinese military pressure and Trump-era United States diplomacy. In an environment where the United States does not give firm promises, Taiwan believes that it must make itself as strong as possible in order to survive both at the negotiating table and in times of crisis. President Trump's remarks warned China and signaled to Taiwan that delays are no longer possible. Taiwan's current military buildup is now a necessary survival response, not a choice. In the end, all these moves show that rather than easing tensions over Taiwan, each party is entering a phase where they are preparing for the worst-case scenario. Political disputes in Taiwan continue, clearly hindering efforts to strengthen its military, which is concerning. What are your thoughts on this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.